Major support for Carolina Business Review is provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. And Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Well, for years now, when dialogue and discussion take place about what our regions and our communities' best and worst features are, the, and I quote, workforce skills gap repeatedly is pointed to as the single biggest barrier. It's not poverty, it's not education, it's not transportation, it's not even politics. Of course they are related and important, but it's this issue of not being able to find enough qualified talent for jobs now, and more importantly, for jobs to come. Welcome again, and thanks so much for supporting the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy, seen every week in North and South Carolina for 26 years. This time we'll go deep on the concept of apprenticeship and its unique power to take a vocation and match it with an organization in need. We will impanel our experts in just a moment.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. Please visit us at southcarolinablues.com. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Barings, a leading global asset management firm dedicated to meeting the evolving investment and capital needs of its clients. Learn more at barings.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review features Dr. Tim Hardee from the South Carolina Technical College System, Will Collins of the North Carolina Department of Commerce, Louis Gossett from the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance, and Roger Collins from Siemens.
Happy summer. Welcome to the program. As always, all the good stuff happens right before the cameras come on, but we're going to try to bring that into the dialogue. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you here. Dr. Hardee, I'm going to start with you. You know, as you have heard, and this is not going to be new to any of you all sitting around this table, but one of the dialogues we hear over and over on this program in cocktail parties, at conferences, is the biggest issue for growth and development, economic development, has been workforce skills gap. And that's a fancy way of saying, these are my words, Tim, we don't have the talent, enough of the talent, to fill the jobs that are here now, let alone what's going to be down the road in 5 or 10 years. So this issue of workforce skills gap, is it a real deal? Is it something we really need to be that concerned about?
Absolutely, Chris, we do. The reality is technology's changed so much over the last few years that in the past, business and industry needed a worker. Now they need a skilled worker. Mm-hmm. And what that means for us, both in North and South Carolina, is meeting those demands of business and industry. And how do we produce a skilled workforce that enables them to be productive and profitable? But we do that in various ways, and certainly apprenticeship is one of those that has been an innovative approach for us to be able to meet those needs of having a skilled workforce for those business and industries across both states. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to bring you into this because you are a bureaucrat to some degree, but you came out, and I mean that in a respectful way. You know, we've talked about this issue for so long, but yet the Carolinas, you could argue, are well ahead other regions and other states in growth. So if if leaders are saying that this is a hot issue, but we're still competitive, is it really, again, these are my words, is it important?
Well, absolutely, it's important, and I'll clarify that I was in private side for 40 years in manufacturing and HR. So.
Thank you.
But yes, it's absolutely important. It's critical for us to understand what the business's needs and for us to address those needs. Every company has a different definition of the skills gap because every company has a different set of needs. We've found a different and a new enthusiasm for introduction of the apprenticeship program. Companies are very excited about it because they see that as an investment in their future. They invest in the people that get into the apprenticeship program. We found that the return on an investment for an apprenticeship is estimated at for every $1 that is invested in an apprentice, you get a return on investment of $1.47. That's pretty good ROI. So companies, when they see that and they understand that they're making that kind of an investment, the return's pretty big on it.
Well, why don't legislators hold on to that ROI as Will just described it and do something more about funding, being more aggressive with funding?
I think they're starting to, Chris. One of the things that we've seen in South Carolina and North Carolina is traditionally we've always been able to train a worker. If we can get them in, we can train them. And in South Carolina in particular, we've seen that manufacturing in particular has brought us back from the depths of the Great Recession. And fortunately, our policymakers have seen that too. So they are emphasizing the training aspect. They could do a better job, I think, with funding, and I bet you Tim agrees with that. But they have emphasized the fact that we need to get mamas and daddies and kids interested in the jobs and understanding the opportunities that are there, and then adequately fund the opportunity to train them. And fortunately, as in North Carolina, South Carolina's got a fantastic apprenticeship program. It's only getting better. And it's our job to get out there and get people to get into that system.
Roger, you're where the rubber meets the road on the supply chain, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I mean, Siemens, one of the big reasons Siemens put a footprint in North Carolina was the fact that there was going to be a robust secondary and initial training for a lot of your workers. So when you hear the comments so far, how do you characterize the challenge?
Well, it's a multifaceted challenge. We're finding that in America, businesses are typically reluctant to enter into apprenticeships. They're concerned about the cost. They're concerned about the ability to educate young people. Their interest in manufacturing and in different apprenticeable trades and businesses. One of the things that we are working very hard at in North Carolina is the other facet to it is funding. So we've recently added the apprenticeship, especially the high school student apprenticeship, added them to the tuition waiver program. So.
Let me unpack this thing about expenses. In North Carolina, Tim, and I hope you're going to bring these numbers up for the Palmetto State. In North Carolina, it's about $850,000 or so has been applied in at least taxpayers' money toward the apprenticeship program, but yet the public universities are receiving about $2.5 billion. I mean, that's a pretty big gap on what funding is. What's South Carolina like, and why is the gap so big?
Well, I think, Chris, there's a piece of it in South Carolina that our legislature has invested. They view that both our...
To that level?
To that level and even beyond. The Ready SC programs where we train business and industry. When we have a new prospect that comes into the state, we provide the training through Ready SC. We then move that to our Apprenticeship Carolina program. We established Apprenticeship Carolina 10 years ago, 2007. There were 90 apprenticeship programs in the state. Today we have 900. We had 700 apprentices 10 years ago. Today we have 26,000 apprentices in the state of South Carolina. So you see the tremendous growth, but the growth is because our industries have moved beyond. Apprenticeships used to be the construction, electric, plumbing, those type programs. We've moved into healthcare, IT, advanced manufacturing. So that's the difference in terms of those high-skilled jobs that we can now prepare for using apprenticeship as the vehicle to meet the demands there. And our state has really stepped up to the plate. And our legislature in the state of South Carolina has been very proactive in terms of advancing both our Ready SC and our Apprenticeship Carolina programs.
Yeah. Do you get the sense North Carolina is competitive in that way?
I do. I think that our General Assembly has also recognized the need and the interest and the effectiveness of this apprenticeship program. One thing that they've done recently was to embrace this paying community college tuition for any high school student that goes into the apprenticeship program, and that stays into effect as long as they stay in the apprenticeship program. So that's a huge advantage.
All the way through?
Yes, sir. And that's a very distinct advantage that the General Assembly has committed to going forward. So they've recognized that it's something that's really valuable for the economics of North Carolina. And I think that another part, and I'll touch on what Roger just mentioned earlier about talking about the skills gap, what we've tried to address as well is we've now kind of renamed that to be called the interest gap. We've tried to get more students and more parents and more educators and more businesses knowing what students and young people are interested in getting involved in. In North Carolina, we've taken that all the way down to the middle school level. We have something called career pathways. So we're introducing this to the 7th and 8th graders to say, here's some different alternatives for you to choose from as you start making decisions toward your education or your career or a combination of the two. So our career pathways program is really involved in making sure students know where they have different options to choose from. Certainly every parent wants their student or to reach out to set a goal for a 4-year education, but we're also showing the advantages of getting a debt-free education if they enroll in an apprenticeship program. Companies support those apprentices. So it's a very active and enthusiastic program for an apprentice to get involved.
Is there, and I hear what you're saying about that, but I want to bring in, somebody said, Lewis, I think right before we started the production, the cameras rolled, said something about the cultural aspect of this, and that does play into it. That's like the white elephant in the room when people talk about apprenticeships. Wait a minute, it's culturally not as good as a 4-year education. Does that play a big role, a big part in this?
Absolutely, and it's why, as the Manufacturers Alliance that I work with, why we're doing some very innovative things in South Carolina. South Carolina's evolution is kind of like this. We were in the fields, and we went to the factories, and we didn't want our kids going back to the fields. And then we were in the factories, and we moved to white-collar jobs and professional degrees and things like that, and we didn't want our kids going back to the factories. Now there's a realization, and we're trying to foster that with our program called South Carolina Future Makers, which is designed to get industry to tell its own story to kids, and particularly to their parents, that there are incredible opportunities. And what we've seen in the 3 years we've been working with this program is people are absolutely blown away by the fact that the wages and benefits are far beyond what these 4-year degrees are producing. Our program is not anti-4-year, but we are telling you that if you're going 4-year, get a degree we can use. As Marco Rubio said during the campaign last year, we haven't needed a Greek philosopher in 2,000 years. We should probably quit making them.
Okay. Well, Lewis talks about the cultural aspect of this, Roger, but what about the industrial culture? I mean, Siemens has clearly adopted this, but
Absolutely.
Do your counterparts feel the same way? Are they hungry for this, or is it a ho-hum reaction?
We're finding, especially in North Carolina and actually throughout the nation, a lot of the employers that I speak to on a regular basis are hungry. They realize that there's a skills gap. They realize that their incumbent workforce are nearing retirement, and they're interested in replacing those with young, talented people. So there's an interest there. A lot of the barriers that we run into is the concerns of cost, and I speak a lot about that.
Cost of education for the parents of the child or the student?
Actually, it's the cost of the apprenticeship.
Borne by the corporation?
Correct. So typically an apprenticeship, especially in North Carolina and most others that I've run into, the company is going to send the apprentice to some sort of related instruction, typically the community college, and they're going to bear the cost of that, tuition and books. They're also going to pay their salary while they're in class, and then when they're serving their on-the-job training, they're also paying their salary as well. So the cost is definitely a concern. It's difficult to make different industries understand that it's not a cost, that it's an investment. Right. And we characterize our apprenticeship program as as like college tuition. It's something that we have to do. There's no question about it.
I think if I can touch on one more thing. One thing that Roger talked about was the apprentices gaining education and experience from people that are already there that may be aging out.
Absolutely.
This mentor legacy is a real big deal, because these mentors, these people that are teaching these younger people, they're excited to go out and teach their legacy. They want someone to carry that forward. So it's actually an advantage for the company to take the experience that has been gained in all these 20, 30, 40-year team members, and they're passing this along to others. And these apprentices have shown, without exception, they become leaders in those organizations. So the companies you're right, they're making an investment, but they're getting a return long-term on this investment, because these apprentices have been recognized as having leadership skills. They've stepped up to the plate. They've made the cut to get an apprenticeship in the first place. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult process.
They have to have a certain GPA.
And it's competitive.
Very much so.
They have to pass a series of different evaluations. GPA, their attendance, their good standing with the school, and those types of things. Then they go through interviews with the companies. So it's not just a cut and dried, you're automatically in, or you write a check and you make the cut. You have to earn the cut.
Yeah.
So these students and these apprentices become leaders in these organizations. So it's a win-win-win. The company wins, the student wins, and the community wins as well, because these young people become leaders in their community, fire departments, churches, communities, and all these other programs. So it has more tentacles to it that are all positive, that we need to get that word out. We need to spread the word across the state that we have these opportunities, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, I want to keep it going. And Tim, I want to bring it in. Before we do that, coming up on this program, next week we're going to talk about health care. And wow, what a sensitive and tender issue in this nation, and certainly in the Carolinas. We have a panel of 3 hospital CEOs. It includes from Novant Health, Carl Armato, also Spence Young. I do this all the time to Spencer. Spence Taylor from Greenville Health System in upstate South Carolina, and John Grisdick from New Hanover. And then also Christy Hall coming up in 2 weeks. Christy Hall is the Secretary of the Department of Transportation in South Carolina. It's a new day in funding and transportation and infrastructure. And the proverbial dog that caught the car. And now, what does DOT in South Carolina do with this influx of cash? And you're laughing because you know there's more coming on that. Dr. Hardee, in South Carolina, when you all talk about, as you just have during the balance of this program, on all of the attributes and all of the positives of apprenticeship and journeyman, Roger, and the whole idea of this not 4-year education, why isn't it at a tipping point? Why isn't there an inflection point where everyone has understood that the costs are good and the output is wildly successful? Why hasn't it gotten further?
Chris, Lewis mentioned earlier about the culture piece. I think it's a bit like turning the barge. It's a slow turn. And I think there's a reality there that for many years the golden ticket was a 4-year degree. That just was the reality. And as we now have, I'll use for example youth apprenticeship programs we start students, we work closely with the K-12 system, start students in the 10th and 11th grade. By the time they're a high school senior, they enroll with one of our 16 technical colleges in South Carolina, for instance in one of our mechatronics programs. Have a year of a technical college degree under their belt by the time they graduate from high school, a year later an associate degree, and Lewis's members with the South Carolina Manufacturing Alliance hire them a year out of high school with an associate degree in mechatronics starting at $20 to $25 an hour. That changes the culture of recognizing high-paying job, high-skilled job, and here's my pathway to do that. Now you have to get that message to the guidance counselors, to the local community.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of players in that, but really getting people, I think the problem that existed in the past is, in the past we had guidance counselors that, quite honestly, they are in their job because they went down the 4-year path.
Sure.
They don't have that much knowledge of business and industry.
Correct.
And so you have to change that dynamic. Now we do that in South Carolina through something we call a Guidance School Counselor Institute. We bring the counselors in during the summer to make them aware of manufacturing careers, the success. So all of those things sort of evolve together to get the word out to parents that this is a great career path with a high-paying job.
Well, but guidance counselors, and I'm looking at you, Lewis, because of South Carolina Future Makers and some other things the Alliance has done, but guidance counselors are drinking out of a fire hose too. For them to be the primary advocate for an apprenticeship program is just kind of one checkbox that they have to do.
One of the things we learned as we were developing Future Makers over the last few years was that the guidance counselors, the principal gets a new project or a new initiative, who gets it? The guidance counselor.
Right.
Fortunately, we've also got a cadre of career specialists in South Carolina funded by the Education and Economic Development Act. That's a good aspect of that bill. The bad aspect of that bill is the SCMA pulled that thing across the finish line in 2004 with the General Assembly. We spent over $300 million on it since, and manufacturing interest levels gone from 14 all the way to 14. That's not progress. And so what we have decided is that one of the problems was us. We weren't telling our own story. We had let government do it. And so that's what our program is all about, is telling our story. And the people whose eyes have probably been opened the most, and it's very gratifying to see them embrace it, are the people funded by the EDA, those career specialists, because now they see that we're not just assessing your kid to see what they're interested in. We are giving them the next step. We have curriculum-based tours in the plants. We have the plant personnel in the schools. We have communications with parents. And when they find out the wages, as Tim indicated, I can tell a kid out of high school that by the time they're 25, they're making $80,000 to $100,000 in a lot of the disciplines that we have available for them, and we can't find enough of them.
Does that register with them when you that kind of salary?
It not only registers, it registers with their parents, and there's one other key aspect of it: no debt.
Without a doubt.
No debt.
Yeah.
And that has got to be one of the biggest challenges. South Carolina's average student debt is up to $30,000. Nationally, it's $40,000. Guess what you don't do when you owe that kind of money? You don't buy a house.
Yeah.
You don't do the kinds of things that establish you financially. And we've got that answer for
Which permeates a community and organization.
Right. And I've said from day one that the best advocacy for apprenticeship is success. So as we graduate apprentices and they buy homes and they start families and they buy new cars, I send them out into the community. I send them out to the community colleges and I send them out to the high schools in their new Challenger, in their new Ford pickup truck. And the students are interested. How can I get one of those? Well, I went through the apprenticeship program, and so it kind of snowballs from there. The interest starts to rise with the success stories.
So, Roger, from the industrial side, from Siemens' side, from your side,
Certainly.
as we talk about it here, is apprenticeship, is journeyman? I really like that term. I know I keep saying it, but is this idea of not a 4-year track? Is this going to, again, you guys are going to cringe at this. This is my term. Is this going to limp along at getting a little bit more success every year, or is it going to hit a tipping point where all of a sudden, seemingly overnight in the last 10 or 20 years, will it become successful?
I'd like to think that it is going to reach a tipping point and it's going to become successful quickly, mainly because, again, showing those success stories, once companies, not just with our students, but with the company as well. I go out and I do outreach at different companies all the time, and I'm constantly asked, what are the benefits of apprenticeship? Of course, the benefits are you're educating your workforce the way that you want to see them educated. You're teaching them your company culture from the inside. You get to choose the curriculum, the type of education that they get. So you're building that person with your own company culture. And it really is a benefit. You're going to see a more highly educated employee. Their cost of poor quality is going to be lower. Their productivity is going to be higher. Their nonconformances are going to be lower. And so it's a win for everyone.
You know, the excitement here is palatable. We have about 3 minutes left. Mr. Assistant Secretary, I want to ask you this question. This is not a popular question, but if this initiative becomes as successful as you all propose it's going to be, and I believe that, when do the public universities, when do the 4-year public and private schools start to say, wait a minute, when do they start to push back? I know they're not working against it necessarily, but when you have success like that, and do you think that the public schools, and I don't want to put you on a spot here, but they're going to protect their bricks and mortar and momentum and their capital campaigns and so on and so forth?
Well, I think one way that we are addressing that and getting the universities involved, and in our state we're very fortunate the university has expressed interest in us and they want to know more.
University system in North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And what has happened is by us embracing such things as IT and healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and all these different programs in these job sectors that are very valuable to the economics of the state, the universities step up and say, we see the value of this because this is a practical experience. The apprenticeship allows for the individual to take their university education and build it into their career. So I think the universities are taking notice that this is a part of the success. The one thing we've been very fortunate with is I've been invited to speak to the university, all 17 of our universities, to say workforce is a valuable part of education. Actually, some of these university students graduating might be interested in finding a job. So we're finding that and we're making fun of it, but the parents are excited about it because we're offering many different alternatives to gain practical experience through the internship or apprenticeship program and moving forward. So I think we're seeing more interest of late.
Okay, 30 seconds left, and I'm sorry, Roger. Don't want to put you on the spot, but do you feel that there will be a sympathetic university system to work with the technical college in South Carolina to push this forward?
Absolutely. They want to be a part of a winning team. They view the apprenticeship as a winning program across the state that provides good jobs. They also see it as an opportunity to gather students that have earned an associate degree through the 16 technical colleges and move into a bachelor's degree program once they have that good job. So it's a win for them as well. And we've partnered with Dr. Prestidas with USC for many of those opportunities.
And Chris,
Gentlemen,
Clemson's been very collaborative.
Yes.
Thank you. We're not going to talk about Clemson or USC. We're not going to get into that, Lewis. I know
Go
you
Dogs,
want to.
go Dogs.
Thank you. Thank you, Lewis. Good to see you again.
Good to see
Will,
you.
nice to have you on the program.
Appreciate it.
Dr.
Pleasure.
Hardee, always nice to see you. Roger, good luck at Siemens.
Thanks for having
Good
me.
night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, Bearings, Grant Thornton, Novant Health, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.